Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. It started with a look. Not the ordinary kind of look you exchange when passing each other in the kitchen or sitting down at the dinner table. This was different. His eyes lingered longer than they should have, as if he were searching for something behind her smile, something only the two of them could recognize. She felt the weight of his gaze, steady, unspoken, and deeply familiar. And yet, there was a spark there, something new, something waiting to be uncovered. The room was quiet, but the silence was full. The warm glow of a single lamp softened the edges of the evening, throwing a golden haze over everything. It was the kind of light that made shadows stretch and moments linger, the kind that turned even the smallest gestures into something meaningful. She shifted in her seat, feeling her pulse quicken though he hadn't moved a muscle. Just his presence, steady and close, carried a quiet electricity that she could not ignore. Her breath caught when he smiled. Not his everyday smile, the polite, casual one he offered to strangers or colleagues. This smile was smaller, slower, one that seemed to carry a secret. It made her chest tighten, as if her body understood what her mind had not yet admitted. She knew that something between them had shifted. It was not planned, not spoken, but it was undeniable. The air felt different. Softer. Charged. She noticed the quiet rhythm of his breathing, the faint scent of his cologne, and how close they suddenly seemed without ever moving their chairs. Every detail, every second, felt amplified, as if the world outside had paused and left only this moment alive. She stood, and without saying a word, walked toward the bedroom. Her footsteps were light, deliberate, carrying both hesitation and invitation. Behind her, she could hear him rise as well, the soft sound of his movements confirming what she already knew: he was following. Inside the room, the atmosphere was heavier, more intimate. The dim glow from the hallway spilled in, touching the edges of the bedspread, painting the space with muted light. She turned, her hands brushing against fabric that was chosen for this very night, red, delicate, daring. And there he was, standing in the doorway, eyes fixed on her with the same intensity as before, only stronger now. Words felt unnecessary, almost fragile compared to the heat rising between them. His silence was louder than speech, his presence a promise. The moment stretched, her breath shallow, his steps measured, and the space between them closed, carrying them toward a closeness that neither wanted to resist. Something was about to break open. They hadn't started the evening with plans for passion. In fact, the day had been ordinary: errands, small conversations, the kind of routine that often fills a marriage. But sometimes, ordinary days carry unexpected shifts. She remembered standing beside him earlier, both reaching for the same glass in the kitchen. Their fingers brushed, and though it lasted only a second, the touch lingered like an echo. His hand pulled back a little too slowly, his eyes catching hers in quiet acknowledgement. Neither spoke about it, but both carried that moment with them. Now, in the dim light of the bedroom, she could still feel that same current between them. He stepped closer, deliberate but hesitant, as if testing the ground they were about to cross. She inhaled, sensing the warmth of his presence before he even reached her. "Are you sure?" he asked softly, almost as if afraid to break the silence that wrapped around them. She nodded, though her voice caught before words could follow. "I've never been more sure." Their eyes locked again, the kind of gaze that said more than anything else could. He lifted his hand, brushing a loose strand of hair from her cheek. The simple gesture carried weight, tenderness, and a quiet desire he could no longer hide. Her thoughts raced. She told herself to stay composed, to keep control, but her body betrayed her, her heart beat too fast, her breath too shallow. Every part of her wanted to close the distance. Still, a small voice whispered restraint, as if savoring this tension was just as intoxicating as giving in. He leaned closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his breath. For a long second, neither of them moved. They hovered there, suspended between restraint and surrender. Her fingers trembled before daring to touch his arm, light as a feather. The touch undid them both. He exhaled deeply, his hand sliding down to rest against hers. Their fingers intertwined naturally, as if they'd been waiting for this moment without admitting it. She whispered, almost inaudible, "Why does it feel new again?" His lips curved into a faint smile. "Because we forgot how much we wanted it." That was when he closed the last inch between them, not with words, not with grand gestures, but with the quiet press of his forehead against hers. It wasn't yet a kiss, but it carried all the weight of one. A pause, a promise, and a moment that left the night wide open for what was still to come. The quiet between them was no longer empty, it was full, almost heavy. Each second stretched out, weaving a thread that pulled them closer and tested the limits of restraint. She could feel her pulse in her fingertips, in her throat, everywhere his eyes touched her. He stood just inches away, close enough for the air between them to grow warm, charged with unspoken meaning. His voice, low and careful, broke the silence. "We shouldn't," he said, though his hand remained dangerously near hers on the edge of the bed. She drew in a breath, trying to steady herself, but her eyes betrayed her, sliding over his face, lingering too long on the curve of his mouth. "I know," she whispered. Yet the words lacked conviction. Their hands brushed again, accidental by design. Neither pulled back this time. That slight contact sent a rush through her body, sharp and undeniable, as if the smallest gesture had already crossed a line. The conflict clawed at her, loyalty, vows, the steady rhythm of their everyday life, versus the fire she hadn't felt in so long. It was frightening how easily one glance, one moment, could unravel the safe distance she had built around her heart. He looked at her, really looked, and for a moment she thought she saw the same war in his expression. His brow tensed, his breath uneven. Yet when his gaze locked with hers, he didn't look away. "Why does it feel wrong and right at the same time?" she asked, her voice barely audible. He shook his head slowly, as if searching for words that refused to come. "Because it's both," he finally admitted. The truth in his tone unsettled her, but it also pulled her deeper. They moved closer without realizing it, drawn by something neither wanted to name. The space between them shrank to a whisper, their bodies tilting forward, caught in a rhythm neither controlled. His hand hovered near her face, trembling just before it made contact. She felt his fingertips graze her jaw, a touch so light it could have been imagined, but the heat it left was real. Her eyes closed for a second too long. Her breath shivered. When she opened them, he was right there, his lips almost brushing hers, so close that the world seemed to disappear. And then, he stopped. Their eyes locked again, pupils wide with everything unspoken. The moment dangled, fragile and unbearable, teetering on the edge of something they both wanted yet feared. The line between loyalty and desire had never been so thin. And neither of them knew if they could hold back much longer. The room felt smaller now, as if the walls themselves leaned in to witness what neither of them dared to finish. The lamp still glowed softly, but it was their closeness that set the real light between them, flickering, charged, impossible to ignore. She took a step back, only for him to match it forward, until the distance between them vanished again. They both laughed quietly, nervous and breathless, the sound carrying more meaning than words could. "This is dangerous," she murmured, her smile trembling at the edges. "Then why can't I stop?" His voice was low, thick with restraint, though his eyes betrayed how little of it he had left. For a moment they stood still, hearts racing, breaths uneven. The silence grew heavy, not empty, but full of everything they were holding back. Every inhale, every exhale felt like a confession neither of them dared to speak aloud. Her hand lifted without thought, brushing against his chest. She felt the warmth beneath his shirt, the steady thrum of his heartbeat hammering faster than usual. The realization hit her, he was just as shaken, just as undone. He caught her hand gently, his thumb grazing her knuckles in a slow, careful motion. Their eyes met again, longer than ever before. It was no longer just attraction, it was gravity. A pull that left no escape. She laughed again, softly this time, though her voice cracked. "We're going to regret this." "Or regret not doing it," he countered, his forehead lowering until it nearly touched hers. The nearness was unbearable. She could feel the warmth of his breath against her lips, the quiet rhythm of his chest rising and falling in sync with hers. Her body leaned forward before her mind could catch up, closing the distance by instinct alone. Neither spoke. Neither needed to. Their silence was louder than words, trembling with all that they couldn't say but desperately wanted. His hand slid up to her jaw, his fingers brushing her skin with the gentleness of someone who feared breaking what was fragile. Her eyes fluttered shut, her lips parting slightly in anticipation, though the kiss never came. Instead, they hovered there, on the brink, suspended in a moment too fragile to break, too powerful to resist. The tension was unbearable, a fire caught between hesitation and surrender. And just as the moment seemed ready to ignite, he pulled back a fraction, leaving the night trembling, unfinished, yet utterly alive with promise. The air still hummed with the tension of what they hadn't done. She pulled back, steadying herself with a shaky breath, when suddenly the sound of a phone vibrating on the dresser shattered the silence. Both froze. Her stomach tightened. His eyes flickered toward the sound, then back to her, and in that look was the reminder of what they were risking. A name flashed across the screen, a mutual friend. Someone who knew them both too well. She swallowed hard. "It feels like the world is watching," she whispered, though no one else was there. He gave a quiet laugh, but it was tight, uneasy. "Maybe it is." The interruption should have been enough to pull them apart, to remind them of boundaries they were dangerously close to breaking. Yet the opposite happened. The risk made the air heavier, their longing sharper. Desire mixed with fear, and it made everything burn hotter. Her hand trembled when she reached for the phone to silence it. He caught her wrist instead, gently but firmly, his eyes never leaving hers. "Don't," he said softly. "Stay here. With me." She froze, her pulse racing beneath his fingertips. Loyalty, duty, the quiet voice of reason, they all screamed at her. And yet, she couldn't ignore the truth in her body, she wanted him. She wanted this. Her thoughts spiraled. What if someone found out? What if everything unraveled? But another thought slipped in, softer, more dangerous. What if this never happened again? What if they kept waiting until all that was left were regrets? His thumb traced slow circles on her wrist, a touch that sent waves through her. "I shouldn't want this," he admitted, his voice raw, "but I can't stop." Her breath caught. She wanted to speak, to argue, to resist. Instead, she whispered the only truth left, "Neither can I." The distance between them collapsed again, their bodies tilting closer until she could hear the uneven rhythm of his heartbeat, feel the warmth radiating off him. His eyes searched hers, pleading, warning, needing all at once. She leaned into him without realizing it, their foreheads brushing. He let out a shaky exhale, as if holding back a storm. The phone buzzed again, louder this time, but neither moved. Instead, the sound only deepened their urgency, as though the outside world were clawing at the door, and they were desperate to shut it out. He cupped her face in both hands, his touch tender but trembling with restraint. She closed her eyes, surrendering to the heat of the moment, her lips parting as if inviting what they had been denying for too long. Their breaths mingled, ragged and uneven, both teetering on the edge of a choice that would change everything. And this time, they didn't pull back. The dam finally broke. His lips found hers in a rush that felt both sudden and inevitable, as if every glance, every trembling silence, had been leading them to this single breathless moment. The kiss was deep, not hurried but desperate, carrying months of unspoken longing. She melted into it, her hands pressing against his chest as if holding on to something she had been afraid to lose. For a few seconds, time ceased to exist. There was no past, no future, only the now, the undeniable heat between them. When they finally pulled apart, their foreheads rested together, both gasping for air, both stunned by the intensity of what had just happened. "We crossed it," she whispered, her voice trembling. "There's no going back now." His hand cradled her jaw, thumb brushing lightly against her cheek. His eyes were fierce, but his voice was soft. "I don't want to go back." That admission struck her deeper than the kiss itself. It wasn't just desire, it was something heavier, something dangerously close to love. The weight of it made her chest tighten. She laughed, nervous and breathless, her hands shaking as she drew back slightly. "This wasn't supposed to be more than a moment." "But it is," he answered without hesitation. His words cut through the air, steady and raw. "It always was." The confession stunned her. What she thought was simply passion now revealed itself as something else, something that demanded a choice. Her mind spun. She thought of loyalty, of promises made, of the life they both lived outside this room. And yet, looking into his eyes, she saw not just hunger but devotion, the kind that asked her to risk everything. The silence between them burned hotter than fire. Every detail, their quickened breaths, the racing of their hearts, the closeness of their bodies, spoke of a desire too strong to be contained. He kissed her again, slower this time, more deliberate. Each movement felt like a vow, each touch a declaration. She responded in kind, surrendering to what had been building for far too long. And just when the passion consumed them fully, when there was no more hesitation left, he stopped, pulling back only enough to look into her eyes. "Tell me," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Is this just tonight, or is this the start of everything?" Her lips parted, her chest heaving with emotion. The answer balanced on the edge of her breath, heavy and dangerous, ready to change everything. And then, silence. The night hung in suspension, the choice still unwritten. The room was quiet again, but the silence no longer felt heavy. It felt alive. Their breaths slowed, though their hearts still raced, echoing the storm that had just broken between them. She lay against him, her head resting on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. It was faster than usual, uneven in a way that told her he was just as shaken, just as changed, as she was. Neither spoke at first. The weight of what had just happened needed space. But the warmth of his arm around her, the way his fingers traced gentle patterns across her shoulder, told her more than words could. Finally, he broke the silence. "I didn't expect it to be this." His voice was quiet, but full of something deep. She tilted her head to look at him, her lips curving into a soft, almost disbelieving smile. "Neither did I. And yet, I don't regret it." The words slipped out before she could stop them, but once said, they felt right. He kissed the top of her head, lingering there as if to seal the moment. "So where does this leave us?" he asked, his tone cautious but hopeful. Her answer came slowly, not with certainty, but with honesty. "It leaves us knowing we're still alive inside. That what we thought was lost, isn't gone after all." Their eyes met again, no longer frantic but steady, warm, and full of something stronger than desire, connection. The kind of intimacy that outlives passion, that carves itself into memory. She reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining naturally, as though they had always been meant to fit this way. And in that simple gesture was the truth. They had crossed a line, but it had brought them somewhere real, somewhere undeniable. The night closed around them, not with fire this time, but with warmth. They shared quiet laughter, gentle touches, whispered promises that may never leave the room but would never leave their hearts either. And as sleep began to draw near, she thought to herself, this was worth every second. Every risk. Every breath. It wasn't just passion. It was something lasting. Something unforgettable.